a second. Why did you say if anyone's easily offended?
No.
You know,
Now maybe
the Kohanim.
Ben said, Kailo shir, I come, as long as it's there. Topic's a bonus.
You think we're gonna get offended, Mendy? I'm not that easily offended. Bro.
You have to start.
Rabbi Kraz, are you going to speak about how firstborn going to become Kohanim in Mashiach time?
Why should we speak? Is it davar pashut? We don't need to speak about that.
Okay, definitely offended.
So maybe he's leaving the class.
Hey, I'm staying till then.
You want a guy.
Okay, so it's just one piece of paper. There's plenty of them over here. Okay, so we begin. The Rambam writes, Kohanim these days. Okay, I guess first we have to give a disclaimer. If anybody is from a family of Kohanim, then they should treat themselves as certain Kohanim. So to Leviim, the tradition, the Masorah, that's all we have, and that's what we stick to. But if we take a journey throughout halacha, throughout the poskim over the years, we'll see that it's a little more gray than that. We'll begin with a story that happened a couple hundred years ago, and this is quoted in the Sefer Pischei Tshuva. Pischei Tshuva is a commentary on some parts of Shulchan Aruch. I don't have this on the paper actually. This would have been on the other sheet. And the Pischei Tshuva collects from all different poskim who speak about all different interesting questions and cases. And there was a story, there was a fellow who in town had been known as the Kohen. For over a decade, he was the Kohen of the city, for over a decade. He was duchening every Yom Tov, he was getting his aliyahs, he was the Kohen. Everyone knew he was the Kohen of like 15 years. Now he was new to the town. In other words, people didn't know his family, but he came to the town one day and he was the Kohen for 15 years. One day he wants to marry a divorcee. We learn in this week's parasha, it's Asur Minat Torah for a Kohen to marry a Grusha, a divorcee. He wants to marry the divorcee, the Grusha, and people tell him, Kohen, this, that. You know what he says? I'm not a Kohen. He says, I'm Bechlal, not a Kohen. They say, what do you mean not a Kohen? 15 years you're duchening. He says, I like the covet. I love the Shkoyach Kohen that I got every Yom Tov. I love the first aliyah, right? All the other aliyahs get sold, but the Kohen always kept, people used to buy it and give it to me. I used to walk in, people would stand up, ich bin gewend der Kohen. But I'm actually not a Kohen at all. You don't even know my family.
Some shoes, some of us buy the Kohen aliyah.
Yeah.
Right. The Alter Rebbe once was the Alter Rebbe used to lane in his shul. He was the one that used to lane, and it was the beginning of Kriya. He was looking for a Kohen. He turns to one of his Chassidim who was a Yisrael, and he called him up as a Kohen. The guy didn't ask any questions. From then on, he duchen. From then on, he was a Kohen for sure.
That's how I know maybe he's a duch.
Right, because the Rebbe wrote Kohen, exactly. Right, so this whole shir doesn't touch upon... So the guy says, I'm Bechlal, not a Kohen. You don't know my father, my Zayda. I told you I was a Kohen. I lived like a Kohen. It was Geschmack, but now it serves me better to drop my kahuna status. I want to marry this Grusha, this divorcee. And the question is, do you believe him? We have no evidence he's a Kohen except for the fact that he established himself for over a decade. So that's called a chazaka. Now the word chazaka in halach has many different meanings, and they're not always the same. Often chazaka means a status quo. Status quo means we know something was in a certain condition, and then you're unsure if it changed. So we say if you're unsure if it changed, leave it the way it was. That's generally when we say chazaka de mikara, there's an original status quo. Now you're not sure something may have happened or not, so we say, listen, if you want to say there was a change, you have to prove it. Otherwise, we leave it on status quo. But status quo means we had definitive knowledge at one point. We knew the mikveh was kosher. Now there's a question. We leave it on the chezkas kashrus, the status quo. That's not the case over here. This person, we never had any definitive knowledge that he was a kohen. It's a different type of chazaka, though. It's an established chazaka. Chazaka translated here, not as status quo, but as established. He's established himself for over a decade. You know, there's a halacha, if a man and woman come to town, and officially as husband and wife, and they live like that for over a month, nobody here was at the wedding. No one knows, but they've lived with each other as a husband and wife. So al pi Torah, that becomes the presumed state. And if she would then, unfortunately, commit adultery with another man, they would be liable to the death penalty, based on a chazaka. Based on a chazaka. Just because they've established themselves, in that case, as a married woman, or in this case, has established himself as a kohen. And therefore, he actually doesn't have the right, after 15 years, to say, I was just fooling all of you. I was just fooling all of you. He doesn't have the right to break the chazaka. It's a little bit more intricate than that, because there's a halach in the laws of nida. If a woman tells her husband, I'm a nida, and she establishes herself as a nida, she can actually come back a little later and say, it's actually not true. But she has to explain, then why did she say she was a nida? So if she says, listen, you know, I was upset at you when you came through the door, so therefore I said, get out of here, I'm Tomei, but now that I've calmed down, I'm happy to be with you again. That's called an amasla, that she explains why she said what she said. And in many cases, an amasla works. So the question is, in this kohen case, for 15 years he's been established as a kohen. He's giving a good amasla. He's explaining why he lied. He got all the honor. He loved it. Does that explanation really justify the fact that he would lie for 15 years? Not just lie verbally, but he acted upon his lie. And that's the issue. When it comes to amasla, it usually doesn't work against an action. When the woman tells her husband, I'm a nida, and then later she says, I was just fooling around because of X, Y, Z. She's just justifying a statement that she said. But for this kohen to justify his actions, an amasla doesn't work for actions. And therefore we don't buy his excuse, and therefore we say, listen, you've established yourself as a kohen you will be, and we won't allow him to marry the divorcee. Okay, that is a halacha which is brought in the Pischei Tshuva, an interesting segue into our discussion. The Rambam writes 800 years ago that today we don't have anyone that has testimony that they're a kosher kohen. Nobody can prove, as far as testimony or even as far as documentation. Who has documentation after the hundreds and hundreds of years of exile, going from one place to the other? Who has what was known as a ksav yichus or a shtar yichus, which the kohen used to always have? Nobody has that now. And therefore, the Rambam says, even if a kohen would be completely pure, let's say a kohen was born, he's completely pure, he never came in contact with a dead body, his mamish toher, and somebody separates truma in Eretz Yisrael. So there's a shaila today, if when you separate truma, is it rabbinic or biblical? But if you would assume it's biblical, would you be able to give it to a kohen today who was born? We know that this guy is pure, never became tamei. L'chorei, there should be no problem to give him the pure truma. Says the Rambam, there is. You don't know that for sure he's a kohen. That's the issue. And therefore, you can't play with fire. If a non-kohen eats truma, he'll get death at the hands of heaven, and we can't play with fire. That's what the Rambam says. So already 800 years ago, the Rambam says the kohenim we have today are bechezkasan. It's an assumption. We presume. Unless Taka says the Rambam, if someone does have this documentation, which would be very rare. But usually kohenim are bechezkasan. So far I didn't say anything. Fine, beside it, it's okay. Bechezkasan. It's an assumption. Fine. Azoi zog the Rambam. It's a Rambam, but bechezkasan, it's a chazaka. In other words, here's the shayla. The shayla, though, that the poskim discussed throughout the generations is, how strong is this chazaka? Does the chazaka mean that because it's an assumption, therefore we treat it as definite? Or bechazaka means that we taka don't know, but they have to be machmir like a kohen. does it become a definite or does it remain a little doubtful? So we're going to see there's a big machlokes in the poskim, and you'll see it very interesting how it played out throughout time. And you'll see even today, there's a bit of a debate, although most poskim today say that, and we'll see who they are, that someone who's from a Kohen family should never entertain the svara that maybe they're not a Kohen, because that'll lead to disaster. But you'll see there's different opinions on different sides. So we begin with number one. Number one takes us back about 700 years ago to the Rivosh. That's not Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov. It's Rabbi Yitzchak ben Sheshes. He was a Rav in Spain. He was a big student of the Ran, Rabbeinu Nissim. And the Rivosh, in the end of his life, the 1391 expulsion from Spain, sends him to Algeria. And he lives till the end of his life. It was 1408, he passes away in Algeria. He's buried in Algeria. And we have two tshuvas of his over here. And you tell me what you think. Number one, Sha'alta, the Rivosh says, you asked, Maise bola fanecha, a story came to you. Ki Yehudi kilal kohen echad. There was a Jew that cursed a kohen. Ve'avoisav, not just a kohen, but also his father. Klolus nimrotzes, it was real curses. It wasn't, it was heavy curses. B'fnei ha'am, it was public. V'amru lach, and they told you, whoever the Rivosh is writing to, lahanishoy, to punish the cursor. Yan hoya kohen, he didn't stam curse a Jew, he cursed a kohen. Therefore what? V'tafas, v'chapasta, you search, v'loy matzasa, and you didn't find Einshe Shel Yisrael Chaveroi, what punishment should the Yid, the Yisrael, get? Because Yan Be'eretz Hazois, in these places in Spain, North Africa, Noyegin Beroi Vinyonim Kechukas Hagoyim Hayishmaelim. There were many Arabic customs which the Yidden had adopted. And now that doesn't mean customs that go contrary to Torah. It means customs that can fit with the Torah. For example, Asher Michlolon amongst them, Shamakal Korev Neviim Ya'anish Einish Chazak. If somebody curses someone who's close to a prophet, in the Muslim world, if somebody would curse the sheikh, they would suffer a heavy punishment. And the Yidden wanted to adopt this if the Yid would curse a kohen.
Liking this.
You like? So Yomer, the Jews said, Ki kain roi lasas l'mavaza mekal la'kohen li'ay zera Aaron. So too, if somebody belittles, curses a kohen, he's from Aaron's progeny, and therefore there should be some punishment on the cursor. That was the shayla they asked the Rivosh. And the Rivosh has a long letter, but in the end he says like this, Hine behold, Shaloi hoyu elo chachom nizhorin milakalu la'kohenim afim hoyu noidoim b'yichusam. He brings proofs that even kohenim that were certain kohenim, chachomim would sometimes give them over the head, put them in their place. Kol shaloi hoyu noigin kishura. If the kohen was acting inappropriately, Oy shaloi hoyu b'nei Torah, or they didn't care about Torah. So in other words, you see that there is room to curse a kohen, even if the kohen is a definite kohen, if he's out of line. Now in this story though, we don't know that the kohen was out of line over here, but he says like this, Kol shekaim b'kohenim shebedereinu. For sure kohenim today, this is in the 1300s, she'ein lehem ksav hayachas, they don't have the yichus documentation, ela mipnei cheskos, it's only because, keep the tradition going, keep the presumption going. Nagu hayoim likra rishon b'toyres kohen, they read first as a kohen, and even if the kohen's in Amma Aretz, he reads before Chacham Gadol b'Yisrael, right? Really, as in real halacha, a Chacham comes before a kohen. Not just that. Yeah, kohen Amma Aretz, correct. The Chacham and the kohen's not a kohen. If the kohen's a Chacham, the buck stops there. But if the kohen is not, the Chacham comes first, even if the Chacham is a mamzer. As the Gemara famously says, even a mamzer, Talmud Chacham, comes before a kohen gadol, Amma Aretz. That means pasha to read before. But we don't keep that halacha. We let the kohen come first, even today where the kohen is a questionable kohen and the Chacham is a definite Chacham. Right. Okay, fine, right. Well, there's different different, even by different families. Some are more, have a stronger tradition than others. But even you have the Rebbe in the room, right? The Rebbe's credentials have been proven, and you have a kohen who's maybe a real suffix if he's a kohen. Halacha, in real halacha, there's no question at all that Rebbe should get the first aliyah. But that's not the minig. The minig is the kohen gets it. Continues the Rivash. K'moshe Kosev zeh, the Rambam writes in Perek Yud Beis of Hilchos Tefillah. Afapi, even though minadin hoyezeh aser, even though minadin real halacha, the chacham comes first. And oiseh chacham chayiv misa, and the chacham that allows a kohen amma oretz to read before him is chayiv a death penalty because he's belittling his Torah by allowing a kohen who's an Amoritz to go first. Shekari lefonav, even if it's a kohen gadol by the Amoritz. Elishanag came pnei machlokes. But the minig by Yisrael is not to follow this halacha. The minig is we always let the kohen go first because we don't want to make machlokes. So we just let the kohen. Maybe the kohen is a scholar. Maybe the chacham, he thinks the chacham isn't such a scholar either. The kohen goes first, and that's it. But what's the Rivash saying? This meaning that the kohen goes first, even though it's against raw halacha, is even today when the kohen might be of a questionable kohen. Nonetheless, we let him go first because of a chazakah. There's a presumption. But says the Rivash, because it's only a presumption, how could you punish the guy for cursing a kohen? The Arabs have a minig. By the Arabs, their sheiks are for sure sheiks, right? It's not a shaila, are they ben achaben from Muhammad, Godfrey? That's the shaila. If the guy is from the clergy, But to extrapolate and bring that minig to the Yidden, who said the guy's for sure a kohen? Therefore, you can't punish and hurt the cursor based on a doubt. That is what the Rivash says. Hold on, that's what the Rivash says.
The whole shear is against my neighbor?
The basis, the whole series. Excuse me.
At this point,
By the way, Rabbi, you should do this topic like once a week.
Not a big car.
that's such a topic I won't be able to do for another 10 years at least. Everyone's going to remember it. Other topics I can do, a month later.
Some people make sure nobody forgets it.
Is this going to...
So hold on. So I want to tell you, first of all, these sources, all the sources I'm quoting today are well known. And, there's I'm not trying to bring anything out of a closet. It's all these things are well known. And the rebuttals are also well known. We're just trying to educate ourselves. I'm using this as an opportunity to educate myself. That's the big mile of having to give a shir, means you got to learn, right? There's no shortcut. Anyhow.
Does that mean that you come before the Kohen?
Like I said, even someone you think is a chacham, don't be so sure. Don't be so sure. Just like the kohen's maybe not a kohen, maybe the chacham isn't such a chacham. It's an assumption. It's just what people think. It's all. That's it. And one day I'm going to say that's it. I was fooling you. I was just having you on. 15 years I had you on. I enjoyed it. It was nice. But now I've moved on to something else.
But at the end of the day, we'll know if it was true or not.
Okay. So hold on. We move from this. By the way, the Rivash was one of the big. He was the end of the Rishonim. Taki is towards the end of the Rishonim, but his tshuvas carry a lot of weight. In fact, Rabbi Yosef Cairo said that his Rebbe, Rabbi Yaakov Bey Rav, the one that reinstituted the smicha, Rabbi Yaakov Bey Rav felt that the Rivash was the greatest of his entire generation. So if the Rivash argued with anybody else in that period, the halacha is always like the Rivash. So his big stuff. So we got to take his word seriously. Before we get to what he says in number 2, which was a different shuvah, I'm going to bring to your attention a shuvah from the Mahar Shtam. Who is he? He lives in the 1500s in Saloniki, in Greece. Shmuel di Modina was his name. Shmuel di Modina. And he was a wondrous Pesach in Saloniki, in Greece. And at that time, there were many Go'onei Olam in Greece. In fact, he learned by the world-famous yeshiva, which was headed by Rabbi Yosef Taitachak, who was from Gerusha Sfarad. He was an exilee from Spain in 1492. This Yosef Taitachak, he makes his way to Greece, to Saloniki, and he opens up a yeshiva, it was a world-famous yeshiva. The Alshich learned there. Some say Rabbi Yosef Kaira learned there. The Shmuel Dimodina learned there. It was like the yeshiva to go to. In fact, in the Sefer Reishis Chochma, from the Arizal's contemporary, he speaks about the greatness of Yosef Taitachak. He wouldn't go home at night. He would sleep in the back of the Beis Medrash just for 4 hours and would get up and the Bochum would see. He would do Tikkun Chatzos, and he was a very holy man. In fact, just to throw in another thing, just because I only have one piece of paper, so I got to throw in as much as I can between the Chidah quotes that 500 years ago, the Eibishter wanted that a Shulchan Aruch should be written. You know, to make peace amongst humanity, there should be one law. And of course, after Yosef Kaya wrote it, the Ramah wrote that, and Levush wrote that. But there were 3 Yosefs that were eligible for the role to write this Shulchan Aruch. One was Rabbi Yosef Kaya, and one was Rabbi Yosef Taitachak, and the third one was the Maharin Lev, Rabbi Yosef Ibn Lev. And they all lived at the same time, roughly, and they were all incredible Geonim in Torah. But the Chidah says Rabbi Yosef Kaira was chosen because of his humility, because of his anivus. Anyhow, this Reb Shmuel Dimodina is learning in the yeshiva of Yosef Taitachak, and then he settles in Greece, in Saloniki, and he became one of the greatest poskim of that time in the 1500s. And in that time, there were big guns in the world. You know, that was the generation. So the fact that he stood out to be a star among stars is a feat, and people sent him shilas from across the world. One shilah they sent to Reb Shmuel Dimodina, the Marshtam, and by the way, the Chidah says about the Marshtam, his psakim carry the same weight as the Rambam. So his big stuff. Now that we said that, I can tell you what he says. The case was like this.
He does the one who said that women should be allowed.
Yeah.
Sure.
Lawyer has to slip that in there.
That's it. That you liked.
A woman shouldn't, right?
No, he says a woman can't be on a bezdin but could be a rov. She can pass shilas but not sit on a bezdin. Yeah, that was the Chidah's opinion. But even that, there can't be a movement made out of it. A specific individual, you know, who's noteworthy, you know, someone who's unique, but not a movement. Not a movement, which is, anyhow.
Woman of the wall.
Or the Yoyitzes, etc. Go back to the Thursday night shir. The Shaila was like this. There was a woman who Nebuch was taken captive by Goyim. The halacha is a Jewish woman that has been taken captive by Goyim. Min ha-Torah, she can still live with a Kohen. Meaning like this. If a Jewish woman had relations with a Goy, she has halachic status of a Zoyna. Whether it was beratzen, whether she did this willingly, or she was forced into the act, she becomes a Zoyna. It's an unfortunate halacha, but that's how it is. And min ha-Torah, she could never marry a Kohen. Rav Moshe Feinstein has a shaila. If somebody marries a Kohen, wants to marry a girl who went to college, American college for years, do you have to assume that she was nivel the goy, that she had relations with the goy? Min ha-Torah, you don't assume. Min ha-Torah, the girl has a cheskas kashrus. Since when, as a little girl, she was for sure mutter, she was born mutter to a kohen, right? I was born already. She was born mutter to a kohen. So now you have a doubt as to what happened. Min ha-Torah ukmina nachas kasa, you put her on her status quo. But the Chachamim said, if a woman was taken captive, midrabanan, you have to assume that the goyim did what a goy would do. And you have to assume midrabanan that there was relations, and therefore midrabanan, rabbinically, she is looked at as a zoyna and can't marry a kohen. It's only rabbinic. But that's the halacha. In this story, this woman that was a shvuya, she was captive, she had a friend that was with her. So the woman that was captive, we're going to call her, what should we call her? Rachel. Hey, Rachel, we're going to make this more... She's with her best friend Leah. Leah gets out of, they both get out of there. Leah tells her friend, Bela, that, I was with Rachel for 6 months with the Goyim. They never touched her. She testifies that she knows for a fact they never touched her. Then Leah disappears, she goes overseas. Rachel is in town, and she wants to marry a nice young bocher who's a kohen. The problem is everyone knows Rachel was abducted by Goyim for 6 months. Rachel says they never touched me. Now usually the woman's not believed. We're not going to, or else the Chachamim's rule would be a joke. The woman is not believed to say that she was untouched. But Beila's here. And Beila says, I heard from Leah that was there, that she says without doubt she knows Rachel was untouched. So it's called aid mipi aid. It's a witness from another witness. Plus they're both women. Plus there's only one witness. Usually in Torah you need men, you need 2 witnesses who actually saw the event. Here you have none of that. It's only women. There's only one Beila here. We don't even know if Leah even, maybe we know Leah exists, but we have no idea if Leah said anything. It's Beila's word that she heard from Leah. So it's one witness from another. It's only one person here. It's a woman. So Shmuel Dimadina says like this. We know when it comes to an aguna, if a woman doesn't know the whereabouts of her husband, and one witness comes and says that I know the husband died, we believe one witness. That's a fact. The Gemara in Yavamis, when it comes to what we call Eidus Isha, to testify the woman could remarry, by saying that the husband died, one witness is enough. Now, why is one witness enough to say the husband died? There's many reasons to the Rishonim. Many say because it's a milsa davidi liglu, it's something which will be proven wrong. You see, for one witness to say I saw the divorce won't be believed. To say that I saw the divorce, you have to have 2 witnesses. Because if one witness will be believed, what's stopping him from lying? But to say the husband died, you know what's stopping him from lying? The husband's going to come back. So that's a simple difference some Rishonim give, that one witness is believed to say the husband died. The heter goes further. Even if the person that comes to Bezdin and says the husband died never saw it, they heard from another witness, and not just that, even if the person that came to Bezdin was a woman, it's still good. So if Beila would have come to Bezdin and said, I heard from Leah that she saw Rachel's husband die, Rachel could remarry. That's the halacha. The shayla, does the same thing apply when it comes to a woman abducted by Goyim? It's a different case, different halacha. Rabbi Yosef Kaira is unsure. Rabbi Yosef Kaira is mesupik if you can extrapolate. Shmuel di Medina, is also unsure. But he says he thinks this Rachel can marry a Kohen anyways. You don't even need the aid mipi aid. I don't even forget about Beila. Anyway, she could marry a Kohen. Because who said that a Kohen can't marry a woman taken captive? It wasn't the Torah. In our Torah, she still has her status quo of being kosher. It's the Chachamim, it's the Rabbanon. We have a rule, whenever you have a suffix of a Rabbanon, you could be lenient. When it comes to a din min Torah, any questions, you have to be machmir. When it comes to a Drabanon, you could be mekel. If you have a question of a Drabanon, you're allowed to be lenient. So it says Shmuel di Medina, the Marshtam, 500 years ago, in Saloniki in Greece. Who said that this girl can't marry a Kohen? The Rabbanon. But who said he's a Kohen? Doesn't know for sure. So it's a suffix the Rabbanon. He said you could also say, you could explain it another way, it's a sfex faker. We know that even when you're dealing with a biblical issue, you only have to be machmir if there's one suffix. But if it's a sfex fake, if it's 75% chance that it's good, then in our Torah you could be mekel. The source for this is a Gemara in Ksubas. Maybe we'll discuss at length in another shir. If somebody marries a woman, if someone was engaged halachically, engaged to his wife, not the engagement of today, but the engagement of way back when the husband would give her a ring and acquire her a year before the chuppah, during that year she's minat Torah completely a married woman. And if she does adultery, she'll be susceptible to the death penalty. A year later, after the chuppah, he spends the night with her and he sees that she's not as advertised. She's not a basula as he thought she was. The question is, could he continue living with her? Maybe it was during the past 12 months she willingly lived with another man, which would make her forbidden to him. So the Gemara says she's okay because 75% chance that it's good. First of all, maybe the relations happened before he halachically engaged her. And even if it was during the year when they were considered married, maybe it was rape, maybe it was against her will. So since it's 75% chance okay, it's good. That's the general rule. So said Shmuel Dimadina, you can apply Sfek Sveka.
It wouldn't.
Correct. Kohen, the halach is different. Yeah, the Gemara is... No. No. That's... Over there by a Kohen would only be one suffix. So says Shmuel Dimadina, here you can look at a Sfek Sveka. First of all, who said you're a Kohen? Even if you are, who said she was violated by the guy? And you can flip and go the other way. Maybe the guy never touched her. And even if the guy did, who said you're a Kohen? It's a Sfek Sveka. These days, in other words, you're right.
Hold on a second. Chazaka is a suffix.
So Shmuel Dimadina considers this chazaka, it's really rooted as a doubt. It's more like bimachmir, maybe you're a kohen, but it's taki right. It's considered a suffix. The truth is, I will tell you, when it comes to sfek sfekas, you don't need both of them to be 50-50. If one's 50-50 and the other is 70-30, it could also work. So even if the person is mistama a kohen, the fact there's room that they aren't, could be enough. Even if it's not 50-50, could be enough to be considered a suffix when it comes to sfek sfeka.
The Rambam in the end of Rambam that we just finished, when Mashiach comes, the Mashiach after Mashiach comes is going to go check the kahuna, the lines of the kahuna. He's not going to take into the fact that a rabbi gave you to the Svek Sveka, it's going to be indefinite. You either are or you aren't.
Yeah, but until you know that, it's a suffix.
So for 20 years, you live like
well, it's like wait. It's like how it's like any halacha that we're not sure who's right, so we're makel. Ayel Yo's going to come and tell us who's right, and we might.
Yeah, but you're keeping the line because ultimately, you know Mashiach's coming. You have to believe it every day.
Yeah, that's true.
You know Mashiach's going to come. So that's not a Svek Sveka, it's nothing. You know that day is going to come, that accounting is going to come. I'm going to rely on a limit of a Svek Sveka to go marry somebody when you know you're going to be, you're taking a huge risk. So fine, you want to say about halacha, whether you're allowed to do it or not.
You know what?
But for a rabbi to tell somebody, do it on that.
Your argument is that of a mashpia. In other words, if you were living in Saloniki 500 years ago, you could walk over to the guy and say, listen, I know the rabbi said it's okay, but you got to think about what you're doing.
From a mathematical
but as far,
okay.
listen, this guy wants to marry, that they want to get married. The rabbi can't pull off Mashiach to Mashiach isn't coming,
On paper, what's the rule?
Mashiach isn't getting in the line of love, right? The rabbi is he wants to make this work.
You want to be strict, be strict on your own.
Yeah.
To summarize, until now, every coin today is in a suffix.
So far, okay, yeah, no, yeah. Hold on, wait. Hold on. There are two sides. Hold on. Disclaimer. There are two sides of the coin. We're discussing now one side. We're going to see the other side. So Shmuel Dimadina said that this captive girl can marry the kohen, and he worded it two ways. You can either say because it's a 50-50 on a Rabbanon, it's a suffix of a Rabbanon, or he worded it, you could say it's a Sfek Sfeker, the 75% chance that they could be married. And therefore he was matir. Crazy. Anyone, you learn halacha, a kohen can't marry a shvuya, the chum forbade it. And all of a sudden, 500 years ago, no, the rule's over, it doesn't apply anymore. Doesn't sit well. Well, 100 years after him, Rabbi Yaakov Reisher was one of the most important Rabbonim. He was a little bit older than the Baal Shem Tov. He passes away in 1734, about 25 years before the Baal Shem Tov. Rabbi Yaakov Reisher, one of the biggest Rabbonim in Poland, and he wrote many, many Sfarim, and the Alter Rebbe holds the world of him. And the Alter Rebbe quotes him in Hilchas Pesach. He wrote a sefer Choik Yaakov. The Alter Rebbe, every page is quoting him. Sometimes he agrees, sometimes he doesn't. But the Alter Rebbe holds the world of him. And he was a huge goyin. And he dealt with the following question that came his way. This is a little over 300 years ago. There was a kohen who married a woman. This woman had been married twice before, but unfortunately she was an almana. From each time the husband had passed away. Unfortunately. But she could marry a kohen. And they got married. A little later, the story became exposed. What was the issue? When her first husband passed away, he had died without any kids, which means she had to do yibum or chalitza with the deceased's brother. Now in Ashkenazim we don't do yibum, but chalitza, with the spitting and the shoe, the whole ceremony. Anybody here ever saw a ceremony of chalitza?
They labeled it there.
Oh yeah?
And then in Shia.
Oh wow, what, in the hospital over there?
No, 20 years ago.
Hospital used to be the zone.
It's 20 years since. No?
David Brin.
That's it. And once they saw how the effect we were having healing the Bachrim, they
Live
turned into a
demonstration.
hospital.
There was a shliach here named David Brin. He passed away. His
Oh,
younger
yeah.
brother had
Oh wow, never.
Asher Brin, a lawyer.
Yeah,
It's always the lawyer's fault.
He was married already, I think, too.
Actually, a Kohen lawyer.
Mina Torah, biblically, a woman who had chalitza can marry a kohen, because Mina Torah, she's considered a widow. She's not considered a divorcee. But the Chachamim said she's considered a divorcee. The Chachamim said chalitza looks like a process of divorce, and therefore a woman that went through chalitza should not marry a kohen. It's only a din from the Chachamim. This kohen is married to this woman. The kohen honestly thought that she was a widow. She was taka. She was married twice. Both the husbands had passed. After the wedding, he finds out that after her first husband passed away, without kids, she fell to yibum or chalitza with her brother-in-law. She did chalitza, but no one had spoken about it. It was like a forgotten story, but it never changes. Once a woman has chalitza, she's forever rabbinically not allowed to marry a kohen. And the kohen's like, do I have to divorce my wife? You're kidding me. You're kidding me. So the shaila went around and it came to Rabbi Yaakov Reisha. So Rabbi Yaakov Reisha says, on the one hand, what's the shaila? You open up any Shulchan Aruch, you'll see. The Chachamim said a kohen can't marry a chalutza. It's not just lechatchil, it's even after they're married. And fakir, Bezdin have to force them koifin. You know those dinim of forcing people to divorce? This is one of those dinim you have to force.
Would the kids be chalolim?
Midrabanon, yeah. Rabbinically, yeah.
Is there
So
a
hold...
rabbinic chalal?
What?
There's a rabbinic chalal? How's
Yeah,
that?
yeah. All right, okay, hold on. So the Yaakov Reisha says that on the one hand, it's a case closed. He has to divorce her. On the other hand, Rabbi Yaakov Reisha says, I remember seeing the tshuva of Shmuel di Medina, the tshuva that we quoted before. And he also says he saw the Rivash we saw in number 1. He says the biggest poskim today say the kohen, it's a bit of a question if he's really a kohen. And the chalitz is only rabbinic, like the captive case by the Marshtam. So he says if the Marshtam, if Shmuel di Medina allowed the captive woman to be with the kohen, because it's only a suffix on a drabanon, then so too here. Chalitz is only rabbinic, a rabbinic issue. And who said the guy's a kohen? He says we can't force him to divorce. But he says like this, we should tell him, what's going to be with your kids? We should tell him, if you stay with this woman, you can invalidate your kids, rabbinically. Why would you want to do that? So he puts on the mashbiya hat. And he said, why would you want to do this? He says, we should try and convince him to divorce. We should tell him, why would you want to hurt your kids? Marry a different woman, and you'll have kosher kohanim kids. Here your kids are going to be rabbinically disqualified. But says the Shvus Yankov, to force him to divorce, we can't. The Shulchan Aruch says you do. That's talking about if you know the guy's for sure a kohen in raw, strict halacha. Today, where does that apply? You never know for sure. It's always a bit of a suffix, and therefore we can't touch him. He says maybe we should scream at him and this and that, but we can't touch him, which we usually would if we would apply the din of koifin, forcing him to divorce, which would be true if you would know he was a kohen. Yeah, what?
By the Dimadina case over there, it's a suffix if she was touched. Here it's a shurchalitza, no?
Yeah, but suffix touched is a for sure rabbinic problem. Because if she was touched, it's a biblical problem. By the woman who's taken captive, if she was touched by the guy, it's pasha also min Torah, she's a zayna. The fact that it's a question is why the Chacham said she's also. It has the same strength as the chalutza. The chalutza is also, maybe people will make a mistake, they're a grusha. It's also just that's what the Shvus Yankov said. Wow. So these are some of the opinions on one side of the coin. Let's go to number 3 for a second. The famous Yaakov Emden. Oh, this is a whopper. when it comes to Pidyon Aben, there is a halacha in Shulchan Aruch. This is in Yoredeya, Siman 305, Shinhei. You have a firstborn son, you go to the Kohen, you fly him down in the helicopter, in the whole story, exactly, yeah. And we put it online, the whole... we fly him down.
I'm curious on the Dimadina case, the guy.
Yeah.
Should that kohen that marries her not now should not take kohen stuff according to that psak? If you're going down that train, you can't now be a kohen, similar to like kids challah or stuff.
How could the Kohen do something relying on the fact he's not a Kohen and duchen at the same time? That's a great question. That's a great question. That's a great question.
You
can't
can't
get-
No, but he's not. He's just accepting the psak of the
You
Rav.
can't get Kohen, but you can't get Shlishi Levi either. You're stuck with
We have
Maftir.
we have a case like that in Florida where somebody rejected his phone.
Right?
But you can't. But based on what? You
Gotta
should know. I'll tell you something. Rabbi Ullman in Sydney is a world famous in halachas of verifying Judaism and marriage. Birur Hayadus, as it's known. When it comes to marriage, to verify both sides, going back numerous generations, there's no shiloh of mamzer, and if it's a kohen case, getting rid of all the issues of a kohen. And I've heard from him that's been numerous times that he's been able to be matir a kohen just because you go back 2 generations and you'll see that there was actually no kohen in the family. It was a mistake, or that a kohen had an illegal marriage and therefore the kids were chalal. It is and this is for the purpose of allowing the couple to get married now. So you're passing people 100 years ago in order. It's like the story we had when we spoke about the chief rabbi of Israel thing, about when Shlomo Goron wanted to.
The Geras.
He passed someone's gear in order to allow this couple to get married here. Anyhow, fine. When it comes to redeeming your firstborn kid, so you find a kohen, you pay him the 5 silver pieces, etc. Is the kohen supposed to keep the money? L'chayr, it's a gift to him. He keeps the money. What if the kohen wants to give it back? In strict halacha, the kohen's allowed to give it back, but the Shulchan Aruch says he shouldn't become accustomed to doing that, because or else everyone's going to go to this kohen to get the money back, and all the other kohen will lose their pidyon aben. Rabbi Yankiv Emden says these days, every kohen should give back the money. Going to keep the money? Because you think you're a kohen? It's a suffix. How could you keep somebody's money? Let's read this inside. Like I said, this is all one side of the coin. We're going to see the other side.
Start handing it back.
Hold on, let's go. Look at number 3. What?
His opinion that Ben Dai
So hold on. Okay. Let's read this in number 3 inside. Says number 3. This is the Pischei Tshuva quoting Yankiv Emden, Rogel Achser. Look at number 3. Ayin C Sheilas Yavitz as Yaakov Emden. Chelek Aleph Siman 155. We're in number 3. Shekasav, he says, Ha'idna these days, Ishtani Dina, the din has changed. To Masha Amr, this set they said, Shalo Ya Kohen Rogel Bekach, the Kohen shouldn't be accustomed to return the money. That's if the Kohen is Meyuchas, is a Kohen. But if someone's only Kohen e Chazak, it's a presumption like there is today, even though we're machmir that they're a kohen and therefore we go to them and we give them the money for the kid. Okay, good point. Ufar kinon b'chayrim al yadai, we do redeem our kids through them. Mishum deloyev shebacharini, because that's the best we have. So you say this guy's a kohen. Okay, so let's assume it's okay. Let's do pidyon aben by him. But miul lahakel. But for this kohen to be lenient and say he's going to keep the money because he thinks he's a kohen, chutzpah. Dahainu lohoitzi mammon ha'av, to take the money from the father of the kid because of a suffix. Kim'at sheyesh leimer, I would almost say that halachically they're required to return the money. That's number 1. Number 1 is he would say, I would almost say that they're halachically required, but we're going to see most disagree with him, but let's just see what he says.
He just joined the Rabbeinu maybe.
Oh, yeah, this is just, look what this is just the beginning. Look what he, yeah,
Does he know what the Yavitz wrote against Rabbeinu and Avitz?
Yeah, that's the whole idea.
V'lefachas, he says another issue. He says, the same issue. Kol koyin yachush la'atzmai. Even if the bezin can't force the kohen to give back the money, but when the kohen goes home at night, when he says kriyish malamitzah, how can he feel good that he has that money sitting in his wallet? Misafik gezel. It's suffix theft. Shema ain't a kohen.
Highway robbery.
Exactly, maybe that. Umishum high time, so for the same reason, Nira, the Shapir Islay Lemevet Uvda Itna. What? That's Reb Shlomo Eiger. We'll see that in number 4. Good. Continues Yankov Emden that lefachas at lefadais ba'almanos lahachshel lechatchila. He said the best thing would be these days when you go to the kohen, tell him, I'm giving you the silver pieces to redeem my kid. It's a gift to you, but on condition that you return them. Because really, he said the kohen should be returning them. That's the first bomb he lays out. Gam, the second bomb.
You can say it's a gift.
Throughout your life, if you're a bechor, throughout your life, every time you meet a kohen, you should redeem yourself again. Because maybe the first one wasn't it. It's well known the Vilna Gaon was a bechor. He continuously redeemed himself until he met a kohen by the name of Rappaport that he felt was the real deal, and then he stopped.
Man, you ready to break it in?
Shmuley Winter was my kid's kohen.
Says Yankov Emden.
We're 100% good.
Shmuley, want my money back.
Gam, we're in the second last line of number 3.
Guys also.
Gam nira shalot says yedei kol safek ha'efshari. Says Yankov Emden, to get out of any question, yesh gamkin, the father should be paid his firstborn from every coin he could find. Maybe one of them will be the real deal.
Hold on 1 second. According to this, every kohen should be paid in.
Oh, he's going to go there. He's going to go there. He's going to go there. Hello, he's going to go.
Other
Umahai time anami. He says, so first of all, he said the kohen gives back the money. Number 2, you should be paid from every kohen you ever find. Number 3, umahai time anami ben hakohenes valavia. If somebody's mother is a daughter of a kohen, or if someone's mother is a daughter of a Levi, halachically you don't have to redeem the firstborn. Even today, the shaila is, how do you know for sure your mother's a daughter of a Levi or the daughter of a kohen? He says also, yesh lifdoise achshav misafik. He said if someone these days, his mother is a daughter of a kohen, don't be so sure, maybe she's not, and therefore you have to redeem yourself. Why is the difference in any other biblical suffix? Whatever you could fix. He doesn't quote the end, where Rabbi Yankov Emden says, Be'emes, I would say a kohen himself should redeem himself. But he says, I'm not going to go that far. Because says Yankov Emden, if we tell the kohen to redeem himself, you know what the kohen's going to say? If I have to redeem myself, then apparently I'm not a kohen. I'm going to marry the grusha. We don't want him to think in his own eyes that his kahuna is not legit.
But that's what you should.
Really, exactly. Yeah, really, bemis he should, but to safeguard, in order he shouldn't throw out the rest of his kahuna, we're not going to make him redeem himself. Finishes the Pischei Tshuva. Look in the bracket. But Tshuva's Chsam Sofer, Soy Simon 291. He writes Bekitzer that the words of the Tshuva Shelas Yavitz Bozeh Ein Nirim Loi. The Chsam Sofer just says, I don't think it's correct. He doesn't say why. So the Chsam Sofer, who was a generation after Yankov Emden passes away in 1776, and the Chsam Sofer was a kid. He's born in 1762. He would have been a teenager then. But he takes upon himself to argue on Rabbi Yankov Emden. Look at number 4, the Marsha. This is not the Marsha in Gemara. This is Rabbi Shlomo Eiger, the son of Rabbi Kiva Eiger, the brother-in-law of the Chsam Sofer. And he also, look what he says over here.
Also in other places argued with his father.
He was arguing with Yankov Emden, not his father. But he does argue. Lahachsi lo yapidyon. Look at this. In number 4, in Shuvas Yaivet Simon 155, Hifriz al Amida. That means he went overboard. Because of, he says that these days, Ein lon a kohen meyuchas, we don't have a real kohen. Yachush ha kohen la'atzma, the kohen should be concerned of safek gezel. Maybe he's a thief, he should return the money. And almost medina is chayiv lahachser. And that nowadays you should redeem yourself with a condition, tell the kohen, here's the money on condition you return. And v'sheroi liftois mikol kohenim, anytime you find a kohen, you should do it again. Maybe you'll find a real one. The kol zeh lefian is daiti einem mechuver. Says Reb Shlomo Eiger, it doesn't make sense to me. Because of what Rabbi Teitelbaum said. When the father gave the kohen the money, he knew the kohen doesn't have testimony as a kohen, but the father willingly gave it. That's called mechila. He was meichel. The midai teinois, and the father gave it with his knowledge. Kivin sheroitz al dei safek ulai pagei b'kohen. The father knows it's a question, but the father's hoping maybe you are a real kohen, and that's why he's giving.
It doesn't argue on his premise. It's
Correct.
self-kohen.
Vimke maich shash gezelika. What concern of theft is there?
But then why go to a new client every time and say Matana al-Manas lahachzer? Because what if you're getting to the right guy? It doesn't make sense inherently. The logic. If every
No,
time
so there's
I'm
a
searching, so you went to the right guy, so you're supposed to give him the money.
You're asking Yaakov Emden. So because when it comes, matana al-manos lahachzer is usually a gift. When it comes to pidyon aben, we're machmir. Even if you know the guy for sure, kohen, don't give the money as matana al-manos lahachzer. Even though you could ask fakert. If matana al-manos lahachzer is considered a gift, then you could always give it to a kohen. We're machmir not to.
No, but it's not.
But
you're
but it
asking
could
for
still
back,
work.
but you don't have to.
No, it is.
It's different than a matana.
Right, but you're giving it to him.
Then you're never
No,
giving it.
you're,
Then you're
no.
never
Matana
giving it.
al-manos is considered giving. For that, no, it's not. No, well, no, it's a gift. Just like by lulav and esrog, you can only be yaitz if the lulav is yours. If someone gives it to you as a gift on a condition you return it, while you have it, it's fully yours. So that means for the kohen, while he had the money, it was fully his.
But if
So it was a
if
redemption.
kohen,
That's a
You're
pidyon.
You're paying.
You're paying for it.
Seder, but
transaction. You
fine,
make the bracha
fine.
on the
But one,
transaction.
when he's holding it, it's his. So that's the pidyon. You gave him something in exchange for your boy.
No, in the times of the base of Mikdash, they did this. They didn't give it and give the money.
That well, you're right. The halacha is you're not supposed to do matan amanos lachser. So you're asking, according to Yaakov Emden, what's the big deal? What would be the kunz of doing it by each person?
Yeah, then-
Because biblically it could work.
Inherently, it's incongruent. His whole logic
No,
doesn't
because
make
biblically matan amanos lachser should work. Anyhow,
See, I don't even have the question on manas lahachzer. I just have a question on matana. It's not a matana.
sense. Yeah, it's not a matana.
no, but the idea is that
Payment for a transaction.
you're right. But when you give someone a gift in order to return while he has it, it's his. So that's the pidyon. It's a swap. It's a redemption. It could fulfill the criteria of redemption.
You
I-
take the baby and you keep it forever. It's supposed to keep the money forever. And in the base
Like
of
I
Mikdash,
said,
that's the way it was
in
done.
Shulchan Aruch, Itaka says you should not give the money to the kohen amanos that he returns it, but that might be only a rabbinic ordinance. It could be biblically it works. Anyhow, the point of this though was to show how far of
These are
Yaakov
Rambam
Emden takes it,
saying it.
but you see the Chassam Sofer disagrees, Reb Shlomo Eiger disagrees, but Shlomo Eiger, like Mendel said, is not disagreeing with the whole premise. His problem just is that even if the guy's a suffix, there's no theft. All right.
Not necessarily. It's just we
Let-
don't
let-
know what he says about the whole premise. He's
Correct,
hitting
correct. His
the
point,
actual
right?
Legal part
Exactly.
of the premise.
You know, we don't know what he says. Okay, let's go to a drop weiter.
Thrown out on a technicality.
Now we have number 5 is the Mogen Avram. Mogen Avram. This is the most standard posek that there is. This is in Orach Chaim, in Simon 201. He says, "V'tzarech hier and lama ein is harin achshav lahaktim hakoyin l'chol henech mili." These days, the kohen's supposed to come first for everything. When you're butcher store, right? There's a line, the kohen should go to the front of the line. Minator, that's the way it should be. And yet it doesn't happen today, right? If someone's in front of you, you ever happen? Someone says kohen go first. Maybe it does
In
happen.
the show we do.
In the show. This show we try and keep the peace, but. The Magen Avraham says that it's funny. It's biblical to be the kiddashto. You have to, like we say in Chumash, in this was parsha, you have to sanctify the kohen, and yet we're not so careful about it. Look what he says: "Ve'efsher einonu bekiim b'yichusei hakuna." We're not so certain the person is taka kohen. That's why. But you'd think, fine, even if it's a suffix, but it's a suffix doiraisa. So it's a problem. What is the Magen Avraham? Even if you're not certain, first of all, the guy is a chazaka. Even 50-50, it could be biblical. You have to be machmir. The Magen Avraham stops here. He stops mid-sentence. He doesn't fear us.
Things like aliyah, other things.
Even to buy first. Even to buy first. Even to buy first. Yeah. There's a whole discussion about partners. If shutfin, if you're a shutuf with a kohen and you split the business, does a kohen get to choose with half? Yeah, these are discussed. Fine. Look at number 6. We also have a shach. The shach is the shach was the same time as the Magen Avraham, a couple years older. Shabsi Kohen was his name, and the name of the sefer is Sifsei Kohen. He passes away young at the age of 42.
The adopted princess.
The adopted princess, which according to Marcus Lehman was the Shach's daughter, but in actuality it was most probably the Shach's sister. Nissan Mindel in his Shmusen mit Kinder, Talks and Tales, actually in different versions, has both stories, the Shach's sister, the Shach's daughter. The Shach was one of the greatest poskim in Poland. I mean, he was big stuff. He had an encounter with the Magen Avraham. I've said the story in the past. That it was after the Chmielnicki massacres, and the Shach made it to the city of Kalisz, where in Poland, where the Magen Avraham was teaching. He wasn't even an official rabbi. He was teaching kids Torah. And the Shach met up with one of the Magen Avraham students. And the Shach said, "Oh, you're the Magen Avraham student." He threw out one of his big kashas that he liked to pepper people with. And the Magen Avraham student gave a dazzling answer. And the Shach thought, wow, if that's the student, imagine the teacher. And he went over to the president of the community and he said, you got to make the Magen Avraham Rav of the city. You know, he's just like a teacher, make the Rav of the city. So the Magen Avraham was approached, does he want to become Rav? And he said, I'm not aware of any vacancy. There was already a rabbi in the city. He wasn't, incomparable to the Magen Avraham, but the Magen Avraham did not want to be responsible to displace a person, so he never became a... Anyhow, the Shach is in Yeridea, speaking about the laws of Challah. The Shach passes away in the 1660s. In the 1660s. Says the Shach, Umashma. Now here's the thing, when it comes to challah, you're making dough, you separate a bit, that's your challah. And what do you do with the challah? We burn it. The truth is, if you look in Shulchan Aruch, it says like this. The challah that we separate outside Eretz Yisrael is only rabbinic. Since it's only rabbinic, it's nish gefährlich, it's not so bad if it's eaten by a kohen who's tameh. Because it's only rabbinic, and the Chomim were okay. But they said not if it depends why the person's tameh. If the person's tameh because of himself, it's a problem. But if they became tameh because of a dead body, then they could. So the Shulchan Aruch says, you should find a boy who never saw an emission in his life, right? So therefore, even though he may have come in contact with a dead body, it's not tumah yotzeh megufa, the tumah is not coming from his body, and he could eat the challah. That's what it says in Shulchan Aruch. You ever saw such a thing? Says the Shach, Umashma, number 6, that the Yesh Oimrim, the Ramah quotes a Yesh Oimrim, not to eat it. Pligi Nami, they argue, Heicha de Isa Kohen Cotton, if you have a little Kohen, or a Kohen Gadol who happens to be Torah, like for sure, a Kohen Gadol who happens, Ein Litein Lahem La'achla, don't give them the challah, Rak serve, you burn it. Now why? Why? The Shulchan Aruch says it's okay. V'chein kosev marshal per kol basim and dalad the ein noyegin losei schala klal lakotten. The marshal of Shlomo Luria, before the Shach, the big Rav in Lublin in the 1500s, he said we don't give it to a kid. Mishum, you know why? The kid's tahor. But who said the kid's a kohen? Mishum deloi machzekinam bizman hazeh b'kohen vad. We don't know for sure. V'chein kosev maharil, the maharil in Hilchos Pesach. The Darcha Lidrosh Barabmi publicly announces, don't give to a Kohen Cotton. People shouldn't think Chalas Chuslarts Nechelas. People will think, you're supposed to eat it. They won't know the difference of the kid or the older person. Tomei Torah, get the problems. The Chen Kosev Mahariv, that's the Mahariv vial, 600 years ago, in a Tshuva, B'dinei Pesach, that we're not noig to give the Challah to a Kohen Cotton, to a little Kohen. Vatam Nirali, and the Mahariv vial says he's not sure though what the reason is. Is it because Chayshinim were worried the kid might crumble the bread and someone else might end up eating v'asl dekala? Or is the reason Deloi machzikinim bizman hazeh b'koyin vad? We don't know if someone's a koyin really. So the Ma'arival wasn't sure why you don't give the challah to a koyin kid. Is it a problem in the kahuna or because it's a kid? The Marshal said it's clearly because there's a problem and we don't know for sure. So far what we've seen is a whole list of poskim who are really... who say there's really a question over here. However,
this part doesn't make sense, this last one, because there's definitely a sveka. Is he going to break it up? Is he a real kohen? And it's just
no. It could be each of them are a full suffix on their own. You don't need both of them together. Each one is good enough on its own. The fact that he might break it up was an issue for itself. And then who's going to eat the challah?
Yeah, but why can't he eat the challah?
Because we're worried if you give it to a kid, he's going to leave Shiraim, and then a regular Yisrael is going to end up eating the challah, which Drabanan is also.
He might do this, but he might not. But it's a Drabanan.
Right, but we don't want to get into the problems. We just burn it. You're right. You're right. And worse come to worse, the Rabbanon. But still, it's we don't have to give it to the kid. We could burn it, and then you're safe. So that's just what we do. The issue of the Kohen Katan stands alone. That the issue of not being a Kohen stands alone. Even though it's only the Rabbanon, so maybe allow it because maybe he's a Kohen. You're right. I hear.
He's saying
Fine.
they're being extra cautious, but
Right.
technically they shouldn't.
You could flip the other way around. If it's rabbinic challah, it's only a problem to a non-Kohen rabbinically, and he might be a Kohen. Like you flip this.
Even the non-Kohen might be a Kohen.
Right. That's, definitely the Kohen might be a Kohen. Right? No one ever said the Kohen may not be. The Kohen definitely may be a Kohen. So we should flip the suffix Rabbanon Fakert. Anyhow, hold on. So who do we have though on the other side? And here's the big. Okay, we got to finish up. There was a father and a son. They were both Sephardim, but they're very important people. One's name was Moshe Trani. His son's name is Yosef Trani. Moshe Trani is known as the Mabit. He was together with Rabbi Yosef Kaira on the Bezdin of Tzfas. And he was one of the biggest rabbis 500 years ago. His son, Yosef Trani, known as the Marit, was one of the biggest rabbanim in the next generation. He was originally in Tzfas, but then he used to go to Turkey to collect money. And then the Balabatim liked him so much, he just moved to Turkey. And he became a Rav of Turkey. He had a big yeshiva there. And he passes away in the 1630s. He was buried in Turkey. It's interesting, but no one ever knew where his caver was. There was a tradition he was buried in Turkey. 15 years ago, they found his caver in Tzfas. In 2008, someone was digging in the cemetery in Tzfas near the Alshich, and they found the Maharit. His family had moved his body after they buried him in Turkey. After he passed, they moved him to Eretz Yisrael. They just found him 15 years ago. Well, it was a big thing. And both the Mabit and his son, the Maharit, learn that when the Rambam says Kohanim are b'chazaka, it becomes a definite. We treat it as a definite. They write this very clearly. One of the proofs is the fact that they make a bracha on duchening. If they weren't for sure Kohen, how could they make a bracha? Right. How can they make a bracha on duchening? Not just that. If someone's a non-Kohen and duchens, he violates the mitzvah min HaTorah. So how could they duchen if they're not Kohenim? They're violating a deraisa. So the Shavut, Rabbi Yankiv Reish responds fakert. If someone's a Kohen and doesn't duchen, he's over 3 deraisas. So if the guy's 50-50, he has to weigh it up. Says the Shvus Yankiv, if he's a Yisrael and he duchens, no, he'll be over 1 deraisa. But if he's a Kohen and he doesn't, he'll be over 3.
Yeah, but then why do we make a bracha?
Why make a bracha? So he says, since because of this cheshbon.
No, on Pidyon Ben, I'm saying.
But when it comes to the bracha and duchening, he says, since because of this cheshbon they have to duchen, therefore they make a bracha. Since they have to duchen because there's more da'iraishas telling them to duchen, they have to make a bracha. The problem is, the general rule is if someone does a mitzvah min HaTorah out of a suffix, even though you have to do it, you don't make a bracha. So this is a bit of an issue.
Every time he did
no bracha. The Rebbe, by the way, once said by Fabrengen,
What was that question?
when the Vilna Gaon, every time he found a Kohen, did he make a bracha? No. Then you think maybe the first time, maybe the Shiloh, the first, if you follow Yankiv Emden, you do every Kohen, then you shouldn't make a bracha even by the first one. Why is the first one better than the 10th? The first one isn't, yeah.
He should say no bracha by any kind. He has to say that if he's claiming it's a suffix. What?
I wouldn't be surprised if he took back.
He shouldn't have. According
Anyhow,
to his logic, he shouldn't have.
The Rebbe once by Fabrengen mentioned that people say that Hillel Paracha was a Levi. And the Rebbe said people say that Hillel Paracha, who was a firstborn, would constantly redeem himself from any Kohen he found. And the Rebbe said the reason why it doesn't make sense is because Hillel Paracha was a Levi. That's what the Rebbe said by the Fabrengen. So my father was there, he said, everybody had the same kasha. What do you mean? The story is Hillel Paracha wasn't sure that whoever said was a Kohen is really a Kohen, and therefore he was machmir. So maybe he didn't trust his own tradition that he was a Levi. I mean, what's the Rebbe saying? I mean, the whole story is that you don't know who's who, so then because he has the traditions of Levi, he won't redeem himself? Maybe, like Yankiv Emden, he was a suspect about himself. So there's many ways of answering the question, but they asked Shmuel Levitin right away. He said, it's a Mishnah Masechta Shavuos. He said, there's a Mishnah. Somebody says, you owe me money. And you say, you don't know. You don't have to pay. According to most Amoraim, that's Bari V'Shema, you don't have to pay. But what if you say, yes, I borrowed, but I'm not sure if I paid back? Then you have to pay. If you agree that you did borrow, but you're unsure if you paid back, then since the collector is demanding with certainty his bori, you admit you once owed, and you're not sure if you paid back, so then the onus is on you, you have to pay. So says, Shmuel Levitin said like this, if Hillel Parcher wouldn't have been a Levi, that means he starts off with a definite obligation, right? So then it makes sense, he redeemed himself from a kohen, but who said the guy's a kohen? So therefore you have to be machmer. But if he has an established thing that he's a Levi, right? Yeah? So then, once he redeemed, even if he redeemed from one kohen, it wouldn't make sense to go to another kohen. Because this is like a case where you're not sure if you ever owed the money. That's what he... there was never a status quo of obligation. And that's what he said. But upon him, so the Ma'abit and the Maharit, both the father and son, paskened that it's definite. Hold on.
Right?
Okay, fine.
Maybe I'm a kohen, maybe I'm not a kohen.
No,
maybe
so
he's
the
a kohen,
truth.
maybe he's a kohen,
Fine.
maybe none of us are kohen, maybe all of us are kohen. It's not something the base of
So hold on.
Strict about it.
We had the Steichem, Reb Chizkiah di Medini, a little over 100 years ago, has a long piece about Kohanim Bismanaseh, and he brings lots of these sources. And I can't tell you everything he says, but one important thing he says like this. The Chassam Sofer, Reb Moshe Sofer, he grew up in Frankfurt, in the house almost of Reb Nosson Adler, who was a great Kabbalist, and our tradition is Reb Nosson Adler even traveled to the Maggid of Mezrich. He was a big guy. The Chassam Sofer used to travel with him. He was mamish a chassid of his. Nosson Adler Nebuch didn't leave any children. He had one girl. And when she was like bas mitzvah age or something, a tragedy struck and he lost his only child. The Chassam Sofer actually says that shortly after, Nosson Adler was called up for Haftarah. I don't know what the Haftarah was, but at one pasuk he stopped. One tear fell from his eye. The Chassam Sofer says, I saw him wipe away the tear, and from then on his face was radiant for the rest of his life. But the Chassam Sofer quotes his Rebbe all the time. And he says, I once traveled with my Rebbe to Prague. And who was the big rabbi in Prague then? The Noide Yehuda. Now Nosson Adler was a kohen. He's a kohen. And the Chassam Sofer says, my Rebbe Nosson Adler and the Noide Yehuda got into a fierce argument. And the entire time we were in Prague, they were going back and forth with this. He says, they would send me to each other with more proofs and more. I was going back and forth between the two. What was the debate? The debate was like this. Can a kohen be under the same roof as a dead body? Oil. Not if it's a Jewish body. What if it's a Goyish body? It's a debate between the Rambam and Tosfos. The Rambam holds, a Goyish body doesn't give off tumah through a tent, through an oil, and Tosfos holds that it does. It's a debate. Now there happens to be another debate between the Rambam and the Raavad. Once a kohen is already tameh to a dead body, can he continue?
No.
So the Rambam says if he continues, he'll get malchus again, each time. The Raavad says no, once you're tameh, you're tameh. So the Noide Yehuda understood that according to the Raavad, once you're tameh, there's no biblical prohibition to continue. It's only if you become tar in the interim, then the prohibition returns. So the Noide Yehuda said like this. These days, everybody is presumed at one point in their time to have come in contact with a dead body. All the Kohanim, at some point, people buried everywhere, who knows where. All it takes is one time, and if you have no para aduma, then that's how you are for the rest of your life. So the Noide Yehuda says, I think a kohen could be in the same room as a dead goyish body. Sfek. First of all, the Rambam holds there's no problem with a goyish body under one roof. Tosfos holds there is a problem, but there's another thing. The Raavad holds once you're tameh, you can become tameh again. And these days, every kohen is considered to be tameh. So according to the Raavad, b'chlal, all bets are off. So that's what he wanted to say. And Nosson Adler, who was a kohen, took this very personally. And he said, that's not pshat in the Raavad. He says, the Raavad who says, once you're tameh to a dead body, he says, if you do it again, you don't get malchus. You just don't get malchus. It's still a biblical prohibition. And therefore, the Raavad would agree a kohen today, even if he's certainly tameh, he can't go into a cemetery. And had a whole back and forth, until Nosson Adler, the kohen, got the one up, and the Noda B'Yehuda finally agreed. In fact, if you look in one of the Sfarim of the Noda B'Yehuda, he actually writes that originally I wanted to allow it, but later on I thought about it again. He doesn't quote the story. I thought about it again. I changed my mind. If you look in the Chassam Sofer's letters, he quotes the story about why he changed his mind. The Stei Chemed quotes all of this, and he says, wait a second. These Ga'onim are trying to figure out ways, how many sfeikas can you find for Kohen to be in the same room? Why didn't anyone mention, and maybe you're not a Kohen? He says, and that's why the Chassam Sofer said in number 3 at the end that he doesn't like the Yankev Emden. The Chassam Sofer says he goes with the Ma'abit and Maharit. Once you're an established Kohen, it becomes for sure. We don't entertain the possibility that you're not a Kohen. So the Stei Chemed says he sees that from the Chassam Sofer, from the Noda B'Yehuda, from Nosson Adler, the Ma'abit, the Maharit. So there's a whole group of poskim who are on the other side. I will tell you, I'll just finish, I'll finish with this. The Aruch HaShulchan, who was a big Rav before in Europe, he passes away in the early 1900s. He writes very clearly that he's aware that some Rabbanim like, when they're dealing with questions, they like to throw in the mix, and maybe you're not a Kohen. He said it's forbidden to do that. The Aruch HaShulchan says you're not allowed to throw it into the mix. You can have questions of trying to allow something for a Kohen, and you can find many ingredients why it should be okay. You cannot throw into the mix, maybe the guy's not a Kohen. It's forbidden. That's what he held. However, I did see a letter from the Tzitz Eliezer, who was one of the biggest rabbis in Eretz Yisrael in the previous generation. He's dealing with a Kohen who wanted to marry a girl, who had relations with a guy, and there were different reasons of why to allow or not to allow, and he does throw in the mix. So there is a bit of a debate today, but I will tell you that the most Rabbanim follow the Aruch HaShulchan in this. They follow the Stei Chemed that we don't throw it in the mix. However, Rabbi Ullman and Sin, like I mentioned, and big Rabbanim that are involved in big questions of Shidduchim, if someone really wants to get married, and if there is a bit of a question in the Kahuna, it could be, I'll tell you, the door is always open for some level of leniency, not stamped to knock off his Kahuna, God forbid. But if the person really wants to get married, or if they're already married, and there's reasons to allow, many Rabbanim will. But let me find to it. They'll say, you're a Kohen because you heard from your father and your Zayda, but sometimes they go to the cemeteries of the Elter Zayda. It didn't say Kohen on the guy's Matzeva. Rabbi Avadia Yosef writes somewhere that in Persia there was a minig that you would give the title Kohen to anyone that was choshev. Anyone that was choshev would have the title Kohen.
What?
Yeah, bro. You call him a Kohen. And he says more than that. He said it's brought that some people, that if they were in a time of tzara, they would make a vow, God, if you save me, I'm going to vow to become a Kohen. So in other words, if a Fraya person says they're a Kohen, no, you have to verify what do they mean. But No. So let me just clarify. What Rabbi Ullman in Sydney, he was here, he could tell you more about it, but him and those of the likes of him, what they would do is, let's say you go back a few generations and you find that even the family weren't sure they were Kohenim. The guy today, for some reason, thinks he's a Kohen. Those are the things he's talking about. Right, exactly. But if you go back 5 generations and you see they're all Kohenim, then we get to this issue about, is the whole tradition flawed or not? So there, the Aruch HaShulchan, the Stei Chemed, most poskim that are not on the paper believe that you shouldn't tamper and you should consider them definitive. But this is a bit of the discussion of what's going on behind the scenes.
Fighting for my brother.